Yep, I am recording.
Mr. Mayor, we are ready.
Perfect. I will call the meeting to order. We'll start off just with a roll call. McKee here. Nichols.
Here.
Schultz.
Here.
And Councilman Bodema and Thomas are not here today. And we'll go on with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you invite everyone to stand and join in with me, I'll get out of the way of the flag here. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oops, don't want to knock it over. Alrighty. Commission representatives, I'm sorry, agenda approval first. Brad, if you wanted to walk through that first.
Yep, thanks, Mayor and Council. For those participating or here tonight, we do have several public comment opportunities. We have them at the beginning in our open forum, which is typically for things not on the agenda. And then we have public comment opportunities at planning business, new business as well. There is no unfinished business this evening. I will note that one of the items under planning is a public hearing itself. And then just due to 3 council members being here instead of the full 5 during planning business, I can walk through some items related to that specifically, but that's all.
Sounds good. And anyone on council have any changes? Anything we want to add or remove?
No.
I'm okay with the existing agenda.
Alrighty. Then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So second.
Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Commission representatives, we have Jeff Dickman and John Dugan. Thanks for being here today. If anything in your guys' wheelhouse pops up, feel free to raise your hand and speak out. Appreciate you guys taking the time to join us. And we'll go on to open forum. So Jessica.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'd like to speak at open forum today, you could do so by using *9 on your phone, or you can click the participants button and then click raise your hand, and I will recognize you. So either *9 or the participants button, or the raise your hand button.
Where is the raise your hand button? Jess, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I don't see a *9 button on my phone, so
Okay.
all I have is a tap to speak.
Okay. Sounds
Well,
good. If you want to give us your name and address.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michelle Friedrich, and I live at 6830 County Road 116. And I am addressing Council tonight with opposition to the proposed electrical substation at 19835 Larkin Road on the southern end of that parcel. I noticed that item was in the consent agenda tonight, and I believe that was just approved. So I'm not sure if you can still review that item or not. But the reason that I am requesting Council to deny the wetland delineation waiver is that, from what I understand or what I saw on the Hennepin County GIS map, is that Wright Hennepin Electric does not yet own the property at the proposed substation. And by approving a waiver on a property that is not yet owned by Wright Hennepin Electric, it gives the perception that Council is agreeing to allow the project to move forward without first beginning discussions with all the different matters that pertain to that proposed location. That includes how the substation affects the zoning of that parcel, which per the comp plan of 2040 is a low density residential area, discussing how there might be implications or hardships to the existing residents and neighborhoods in the area of the proposed substation. And the location, I actually just did a measurement before the meeting tonight, is only like a mile away from like the gateway to Corcoran, which is the 116 and Hackamore Road. And I know that was a concern at prior meetings about how that looks when you come into the city of Corcoran. So that's another concern that I was wanting to bring up. After another brief search, I found that there was a 40-acre plot of land just north of Larkin Road and County Road 116. And it's my understanding that after talking with Wright Hennepin, that was the first choice of the location for the Wright Hennepin electric substation. There's also a 70-acre parcel, which is directly west and behind the commercial district of Corcoran. And that parcel is actually zoned light industrial, which is what the substation is. And in that location, it's pretty much surrounded by like farm fields, which is probably what the substation was on Larkin and County Road 116 when it was originally put in back in 1950. So those were a couple of options that I had found, and I'm sure there's other specifics of things that have had to happen in order for there to be found a perfect spot for the substation. But my argument would be that those are additional areas where there are no residents living. Anyways, that I wanted to bring that up. And then I also understand the need to expand electricity in Corcoran, along with our cable and internet, especially as Corcoran grows. We're going to need those things that just make our lives easier. However, I am asking council to review other options for the location of the substation because of the reasons I just stated. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle. And just to clarify one thing, that we have not approved the consent agenda yet. That's coming up. But other than that, I appreciate your input. And Jessica, do we have someone else?
Yes, Mayor, we have Diane Wally. Diane, I'm going to go ahead and ask to unmute if you want to go ahead and speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
Diane, could we just get your name and address?
Yeah, I'm Diane Wally. I'm at 6861 Old Sturbridge Drive.
Perfect, thank you.
And I'm thinking this is the correct portion to have a comment. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes,
Just for some background, obviously I live in the neighborhood that would be adjacent to the proposed site. A little background, I have had experience in the city before. I was on the City Hall Committee back in the 90s. I was on the first Charter Commission. I was also on the Planning Commission. So I just want you to know I have some background in this, as well as being on the Rockford School Board for 16 years. So, you know, I have that background as well as being an affected neighbor. Michelle has been in touch with our neighborhood, and I know that in the first or in the comp plan I was involved in, the acreage that you're proposing was zone light industrial at that time. Now I understand it's residential. Has been rezoned as to larger lot residential. And I question, and also that they would want a variance as to, Wright Hennepin's asking for a variance as to the size of the lot. And all those factors, along with the facts that Michelle brought up, make me wonder why this is even being considered when there are other options. The zoning is wrong. They're asking for variances. I know there was a wetland delineation involved. Is it for the convenience of Wright Hennepin? Weighing that against the impact on people who've lived here for decades and another new neighborhood that's actually going to be right across the street. It seems that a lot more thought should be put into where this substation is located. And I wanted to ask you to think about those factors when you're considering whether this is the best choice for the substation. I understand there need to be substations, I get it. But to plop it right down in the midst of a residential area, and potentially the golf course could be a residential area at some time in the future. I think those are all considerations, as well as, do we really want a substation right along a main drag where, we already have one? where people will be driving by all the time. Is that the look we want for our city? So I really ask you to very carefully consider this when you're making a decision. And obviously there are other options. So is this just the expedient and easy way out? Or are you really putting the citizens before the needs of the business, right, Hennepin? So that's what I wanted to express tonight.
Thank you, Dan.
Mhm.
Thanks, Diane. Thanks for your service to the city of Corcoran too over the
Absolutely.
years.
Right. So, you know, I have a vested interest. I want things to go well here.
Thank you. Jessica, is there, looks like there's one more.
Yes, Mayor, there is one additional hand raised, Landon Pohl. I'm going to ask to unmute. If you want to go ahead and give us your name and address.
Yeah, thank you. Landon Pohl at 20207 Abilene Lane in Corcoran. So I live at the very end of Abilene Lane. And I got to be honest, I'll be upfront. I haven't followed the substation a whole lot. I haven't been following a lot of the plans for it. But my question to council is this similar to the first gal that spoke, I think Michelle, is this really the look that we want Corcoran to have as you come up? I mean, I say Corcoran has a downtown, which sounds maybe silly to some people, but as you come up to downtown, is that the look of the city we want to give to people with a large substation, or is there a better fit for it, a better location for it? And I guess that would be my challenge to those that I really don't think that is the look we want to give to our city and to potential residents or potential businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Landon. Appreciate your input. Jessica?
Mayor, no one else has raised their hand at this time.
Okay, let's give it a minute here. And
Again, if you'd like to speak, you can press the *9 button on your phone, or if you're on a tablet or a computer, click the participants tab and raise your hand.
looks like we're good.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, then we'll move on to presentations. We have with us Christy Janigo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is she on?
Yeah.
There she is. Perfect.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right, wonderful. So hello, I'm Christy Janigo, and I'm Commissioner Kevin Anderson's Policy Director. Thank you so much for having me here today. First, I want to say congratulations to the newly elected Mayor McKee and Councilmember Nichols, and greetings to returning council members and City Administrator Martins. I'm pleased to be here today representing Commissioner Anderson. One of the commissioner's favorite parts of his job is connecting with the people he's serving, so all of you. I've been reviewing your 2040 comprehensive plan and working with the commissioners so that we better understand how you see the future of your city. I know the commissioner has also spoken with several of you to begin open communication with you. We recognize your city is facing complex issues as it prepares for population growth, while accomplishing your vision to become a vibrant community focused around a thriving town center while preserving the natural character and agricultural roots. On behalf of the commissioner, I want to invite you to please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Find us on the Hennepin County website, on Twitter, or on Facebook. And we very much look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Christy. Alrighty. Then I think we're on to consent agenda. Is there anything that council would like to pull? Jeremy.
I would like to pull items C and G, please.
C and G. Councilman Schultz, anything you'd like to pull?
No, that Jeremy covered it.
Alrighty. Then I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, D, E, F, and H.
So moved.
Second.
Alrighty. We'll just do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
carries. Alrighty. We'll start with C, 7C, the pay equity reporting. And Jeremy, you had a question, or what did you want to get into on that?
Not so much a question. I just wanted to make a couple of observations in the spirit of continual improvement, as I am wont to do. I think it is a compliant report, which is really good to see. I did notice that we don't really have a lot of women in very senior positions. So that might be something that we want to try to look at as we're trying to expand staff over the next year in accordance with the goal setting session. That might be an opportunity for us to have some improvement in this area. And I also wanted us to consider, as we are adding new functions to the city, as we're trying to consider what functions should be done internally versus by vendors and contractors, we'll probably need to consider reshuffling where responsibilities fall between people, which could have a significant impact upon job descriptions and roles, and therefore impact pay equity in the future. So we should probably consider how we would deal with that kind of reshuffling. Not anything to do with today at this meeting, but in terms of our long-range planning. And I'm sure, Brad, you're already all over this, but just to highlight, this is an additional challenge for the city. As we reorganize ourselves to better confront the realities of a growing larger city, we want to make sure that we are staffing in the right skill sets, and that we're taking advantage of people that we already have and where they can meet those needs, and also thinking about what new positions have to be created and how is that going to be structured. And that might be something we need to spend significant time exploring.
Okay. Alan, did you have anything on this one?
No.
What is this? Okay. But in terms of, I think that you raised some good points, Jeremy. In terms of the actual item, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 7C as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols,
Aye.
Schultz,
Aye.
carries. And then the other one was G, right Hennepin wetland waiver for Larkin. 1 second here. I'll pull it up. And Jeremy, did you have something you wanted to discuss, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I know that there are a number of people in the public who contacted me about it. We've had a few of them speaking in the public comment section. I wanted to just share some information on this one in the beginning here. So I did meet with the VP of Development for Right Hennepin earlier this week to talk about this project with them. He did share that the primary purpose for this station is due to population growth in Corcoran. So we have a lot of new housing that's already gone in, and more is going to be coming in with Tavera, and then future developments that are yet to be submitted. So this is really intended to deal with the long-range needs of the city. It sounds like the timeline that they need in order to satisfy their objectives for network reliability is they want to see it built in the next year or two. I did ask them about alternate sites, and they said that they had looked at a couple. One of them was the industrial area down Larkin, but they hadn't gone through an exhaustive analysis of the benefits of that site versus the one that they're currently proposing. It's pretty clear, and he was very open that they want to make sure they've got a robust electrical network in the area, and their primary goal in locating here is it's under an existing power line. It was possible to move to a different location. They would just need to run existing lines over to wherever that new substation location would be. Their only concern with running that down Larkin in particular was if there's a need to expand Larkin, or some event happens that causes damage to the line in that location, it's an additional exposure that's harder for them to repair. So what I asked for him to do is, before they submit their actual request for approval next month, that they would look at and quantify the risk and cost benefit that they get from the existing site. I do agree with the callers that this is not an optimal location. I think it's not, just like in your home, you wouldn't have an electrical panel just off your kitchen or off your family room. You probably wouldn't have, in an ideal city, a pretty large substation right in the core of the residential area. So I think if there's an opportunity to locate this somewhere else, I think that would be preferred. So I would urge the applicant to consider other locations before they zero in too firmly on this one. I know the city has tried to convince them to look at other sites within the city and haven't been successful with that to this point. I don't know if we have anybody from Red Hennepin on the call, but I would just continue to urge them to, if you really feel this is the best location, we would want to see strong evidence that there's unique advantages that you get from this site that are compelling, that would compel us over and above the needs of the residents. So in that light, I would actually like to reject this request. We aren't required to approve their request, and I would see it as a gesture in support of the residents to decline.
For the wetland waiver?
Yes.
That may I, Mr. Mayor?
Of course.
So Jeremy, I understand you're addressing the concerns that were brought up by the members of the community, but the topic at hand is just to allow a waiver of the wetland delineation. It's not an approval of the site in any way, shape, or form by the city. It's not a fast track of an application. It has no indication that the city will ever approve the site in its form at all. It's just allowing the applicant to not have to go through the wetland delineation in this property. So if anything, I would say not making the applicant apply for a wetland delineation is actually saving the applicant money, to which case they may consider not investing as much into this site. By rejecting this, we're actually making them do the wetland delineation. So they're investing more into the site. So I don't see the benefit of rejecting this waiver.
Yeah, and I know it does specifically say in the resolution, the proposed resolution, that the granting of the wetland delineation waiver does not grant nor imply approval of any plat or variance. So we are being very upfront, and I mean, they are two separate things to Alan's point.
I appreciate that. I guess as I was thinking about it, if we have multiple choices, if the applicant has multiple site choices, part of the consideration for them in making their selection between those options will be the relative cost of pursuing each of them. So if there is a strong compelling reason to put it in the existing location that they are proposing, this would help to make that more realistic, in that they would have to bear the full cost. And if it really is better, it's probably worth it for them. And if it's not better, it helps to provide an incentive to look at alternate sites.
I think I'm following what you're saying.
I guess I'd make a motion to approve the wetland delineation waiver.
Okay, I'll second that. We'll do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols.
Nay.
Schultz.
Aye.
Motion carries. And just for the record, I do share a lot of the same concerns that you're talking about, Jeremy, there about whether or not that's the best location for it. I have a lot of hesitancy about it, but I don't think necessarily this is, this very clearly is not the same thing as the approval that will be heard next month by us. And to Alan's point, I wouldn't want them to sink more money into something that might not be the best spot, if that's truly where we're going to go with that. So that's just kind of a little bit of my thinking behind that. But
sorry if you're getting that phone.
No worries.
I'd like Mayor to say on the record too, I've had conversations with Right Hennepin and expressed the same concern. So by us voting this wetland delineation waiver through, like I said before, is no way an endorsement of this site. So just so people are aware.
Right. All right, I Appreciate the discussion, guys. With that, we are on to planning business, and there's a public comment opportunity. If you're interested in speaking up, Jessica can acknowledge you and just raise your hand. She'll get you set up. Jessica.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mayor. So if you would like to speak, you can press *9 on your phone or click the participants tab and the raise your hand button.
Mr. Mayor, I will also note that item 8B is a public hearing for the easement vacation itself.
Yes,
so there will be a
thank you.
public hearing for that item separately as well.
Gotcha.
At this time, Mayor, I don't have anyone raising their hand. We could wait a moment.
Sure, we can wait a few more seconds, see if anyone raises their hand. Otherwise, looking good. So the site plan amendment for and conditional use permit for Nelson International, and I will hand it off to Kendra.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Jess is going to pull up the slide for this application, which is an amendment to a application that was approved in September. And as part of that approval for Nelson International, they did show a future expansion. And as they looked at their plans, they decided now was the opportunity to make some changes. And so I need my cheat sheet from the slide. So
Sorry, give me just 1 second here.
And Kendra, while Jessica's pulling that up, are you going to go over the voting discussion that the city attorney talked to you about?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Separately for this and for the easement when we get to that.
Thank you.
Sorry, Kendra, 1 second here.
Is that we do have a 60-day review period that ends on February 2nd for both the site plan and the easement vacation. This is my tap dance while I'm waiting for the slideshow. And if for some reason we will likely table the easement, and if we have issues with questions about the site plan, we also have time that we could extend this to the next meeting. The site plan and conditional use permit amendment does require 3 votes. And the vacation requires 4 votes. So we will not be able to act on the vacation this evening. We would, if you choose, be able to act on the site plan amendment. And the site plan amendment is something that could be approved administratively. And I'm just going to start without my slides. Yep. We keep moving. We'll catch up, is something that could be approved administratively because of the size. So the code allows a 10% increase in an approved site plan to be approved by staff administratively. Because this hasn't been built yet, was just recently approved, we felt like with the new council, it was a good opportunity, just as a reminder of what this project was, to be able to bring it in front of you. So this really stays the same. What happens is the building flips vertically on the site. So originally you drove in off of 101, and I know you have the plans in front of you, so hopefully you can follow along without the slides. And you came into the service bays, and what they're doing is flipping it so the retail center is near the entry, which I think is a nice entry for the site and frankly a better entry into the project.
Kendra, I apologize. So I don't know if I got the slides from you actually today. I don't know. I know I didn't give them to Jessica, so I'm realizing they might be in my inbox that I'm looking through right now.
Can I?
No, I apologize.
Can I pull it up and run it or no?
You host.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor and Council.
No worries.
You know, it could be part of the whole IT change. It was a transfer email that came over, so
okay.
For the size. So, you know, things happen. We'll get it up here. And it will be easier, I think, when we can look at it. Share my screen. So again, this was approved in September. This is the site on the north side of town, north of Steeg Road on 101. Across the street is the KOA, and behind it, this was platted as part of Bellwether. So this is part of the Bellwether project. And the site plan, again, flips the building and increases the building size from 34,000 square feet to 37,000 square feet. And really, the building is very much the same as approved. Again, with the one change that flips the retail, which I think improves internal circulation and the view to the site. The thing that I wanted to call out specifically that is different is that as part of the original approval, although we do not have a tree preservation ordinance, as part of the original approval, there was some tree preservation. There were 4 larger trees along 101 that were supposed to be preserved that were erroneously removed. And I think they were significant enough. This is the old photo. Not all of these trees were supposed to be preserved, but 4 of them were. And you can see they're good sized trees that would provide some immediate screening. And the applicant, acknowledges that their contractor did remove the trees. We think it's important to replace those trees. And I spoke with one of the registered landscape architects on my staff about how to best do that. You simply can't bring in a tree that size and think it'll live. They don't do well that size. So we thought we should increase the number of trees, but still do bigger trees than we would typically require as part of a landscape plan. And in the original plans, the trees were planted pretty closely together along 101 already in the new proposal. And so we suggest for the council to consider that some of the trees on 101 be moved to the north and west side of the building where these existing trees were removed and new trees will be planted. So we would not lose any trees overall. All the landscaping that was originally approved would still be required to be planted, plus 6 additional larger trees and some additional shrubbery along 101. And we're pretty specific in our ordinance about how big those trees are and the spade that needs to plant them, 92-inch tree spade so that they don't chintz out on getting the hole big enough and getting the trees in a way that they'll survive. That's a real trick when you're spading in bigger trees. Sometimes they just don't do well. So we tried to be pretty specific. The trees that were removed are a little hard to see, but they were in this area. And so we are suggesting for your consideration that some of these trees right here, these will remain, but some of these be shuffled around to provide more screening in the back. And in their place, those 6 large trees and shrubs be planted. Again, this is an image of what that would look like. These are the new trees here in the red circle. Those are the 6 new spaded in trees with some shrubs. This is what it would look like the day it's planted. So you can see the difference between this evergreen and this in a normal landscape plan, a 4 to 6 foot tree versus these trees. And so we want to give them room to thrive and grow. And eventually we'll provide screening more closely relating what was removed. So certainly the council can talk about that. We think that's a good solution to provide replacement trees as well as also a benefit, gives them room to grow and provides a little more screening on the north and the west. So certainly open to modifications from the council, but that is our recommendation. We do recommend approval of the site plan amendment, which again is a 3,000 square foot addition to the approved building, flipping the building to put the retail on the north end, and then correcting the landscape situation. Happy to answer any questions.
Quick question for you, Kendra. You said you think that the kind of the flipping of the layout of the building would be beneficial. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What you think the change was and why that might be beneficial to the surrounding property owners?
Yeah, I just think because you've got this opening at the curb cut, and again, we do have a good amount of screening along 101, but instead of coming into the service bays and having a view shed into the service bays on the north, I think you come into this retail center, which just is a little more decorative entry here. So this is what you drive in to see is this piece as opposed to the big overhead doors. And so if you're driving south on 101 and you're sort of looking down that driveway, you won't have a big view shed, but that's what you would see first through that driveway entrance.
And how about the screening to the south? I know there's a lot mentioned about the north and west and moving some trees over there. What is in the plans, I guess, currently in terms of screening? Because the majority of the houses are to the south and to the west of the surrounding properties.
Yeah. The approved landscape plan, I'm going to stop my screen share and pull that up for you here quickly. Again, that is on the south has not changed since the original approval, but I will pull that up here. I just
Appreciate it.
Get to the screen. Here we go. And share the screen.
While you're working, Kendra, is the orientation of the building actually rotating? Like, is the long axis pointed in another direction? Or is it just the design of the building that's changed within the existing shape orientation?
The shape orientation is staying the same. It's just flipping north to south. So this retail space was down here, but it remains this more vertical orientation. And so this landscape plan is the approved landscape plan, doesn't reflect some of our changes where we said, you know, we think maybe move some of those trees there. So along the south, we do have a city trunk infrastructure line, so we're balancing that with the landscaping, but we do have a row here of 7 trees along the south property line there.
Okay. In terms of the parking lot, does that changed at all with this new plan?
Well, it did change because the perimeter parking remains the same. But what changed is, of course, the parking was always in front of the retail. And so when the retail component was here, this parking here was down here.
Okay. But same size, same number of stalls?
Correct.
Gotcha.
I thought it said in the packet that we were adding, or the request was to expand the parking lot and add more spaces. We approved 95, proposed plans provide 127 stalls, so about a 33% increase. That's on page 160 of the packet. Am I reading that wrong?
Let me double check. I think they have more parking than is required by the code was what we were, but let me just double check. Oh, that is, yes, you are reading that correctly. They did add more parking. I'm sorry. That's what that says. And I don't know where the new parking is.
And how many did you say it was, Jeremy?
If you look at page 160, it says the approved plans provide 95 parking stalls and the proposed plan provides 127 total parking stalls for customer, company, service, and overflow parking, for a total of 87 parking stalls are required.
At the top of page 4 for the individual item.
Gotcha. Thank you. I have mine printed out, so.
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm working off my PDF.
Okay. Yeah, the increase is something I think we need to be taking into account. That's you know, it's not massive, but it's not insignificant, I don't think. That's a decent number of additional parking spots, and I guess with the increased footprint of the building, I'm assuming that's just with the reconfigured parking lot, that's not additional paved area.
There is no additional paved area. So I think I'm pulling up the original site plan. I think the parking may be back in that southern portion of the lot.
Gotcha.
I apologize. I want to compare the two for you.
Kendra, were those previously larger stalls for maybe sales or service of semis that converted into regular size stalls?
I think they had trailer parking, didn't they? Where they drop trailers for when trucks are being serviced.
At the north end of the site, they did, I know for sure. And this is a big packet, so I apologize. It's taking me so long to get the old packet pulled up from September 24th.
Better to get it right than to get it fast. Take your time.
Well, that's loading. Kendra, do you know if there was any reason given for the change? It was just kind of, that they had planned on maybe doing future expansions and now they're planning on doing that earlier, or is it just a change in kind of the layout they wanted?
They always planned to do the expansion. And so as they started, I think, doing their numbers for their building, they realized that it made sense to, rather than do it as a future addition, do it now.
Thanks. Okay.
Sorry, did they expand in the sales room, not in the service space, didn't they?
Correct. So there is a little more parking. So I think you can see my screen again. This is the approved site plan that they could build today. And this is the revised site plan. Of course, unfortunately, I pulled up two different sheet pages, but nevertheless, you can sort of see that there is a little more retail parking there. This generally is the same here. We've got the same tractor trailer parking up here that Alan was talking about. That does remain in the new plan. And I'm desperately trying to figure out where the additional parking came from.
One thing I'm just noticing, the area for future expansion, that looks like it shifted from the north on the original approval to the south.
Right.
For this, is that something that is that a result of switching, the layout of the building, or is that set in stone? My concern would be that it gets too close to the houses to the south.
If you look at the new north line of the building proposed right here, that extended out here. So the addition really did tend to come out to this end where the addition was planned. But you're correct, the future addition on the south that they're showing moves the south building line from this point slightly further south. The difference between this basically stayed the same, and they added on to the north, and the future expansion now would be on the south. So it would creep closer, the building wall, to the south. And this, just as a note, this isn't Bellwether. This is a commercial lot for Bellwether. The residential is over here. These are residential lots in Bellwether over here. But yes, you're correct. The change to the expansion would ultimately, if built, bring the building closer to the south lot line.
Gotcha.
And a couple of the parking stalls got added in this area. I apologize. I would have to highlight these and match them up to see exactly, but I can see that some of the stalls happened in this area.
Is the applicant on? Can he talk about it?
There is somebody from Marcus on. If you guys are from Marcus Construction.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yep. Go right ahead.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and council members, this is Ryan Nelson. We're at Marcus here with a couple of people involved with the project. We're a little confused about the parking stall thing because we really didn't add much for stalls except maybe a couple around the building that we're aware of. So we don't feel we added a lot, much.
Gotcha.
Around the perimeter is the same, and we actually lost a little bit on this west side where there's this kind of towards the northwest by the pond. We lost a couple in that corner, but that's truck parking stalls. There might be a few more automotive stalls, but that's what we added there. And then since we're on, if you guys have any other questions about why we flipped the building, why we desired to do that is because of traffic flow on the site. And it just, once we found out what our driveway entrance and our future driveway entrance will look like, we decided that it would flow better with the building switched around. And then, once we switched the building around, it was more difficult to add on to for the part storage and that side of the building. So we decided to expand the size a little bit to make the parts warehouse larger now, knowing that in the future, there's probably no option to add on to that area. So that was kind of the main drivers with the changes that we're asking for.
So did you add an actual showroom too?
Yeah, we made the showroom larger, yes.
Okay.
There's always been a showroom though.
There's always been one. We just made it larger, and then the inside of the building, the layout on the inside of the building has changed a fair amount on the retail end of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't remember the showroom with the door on the outside. I'm assuming that's to bring a truck in for show.
Yes, that's to bring a vehicle in, because once we switched it around, we're like, we're gonna have this, fairly large empty space. We're like, well, can we add a door and put a vehicle inside? And that was what we were able to accommodate.
Is it correct to say the original plan for future expansion was to expand? Was that to expand the showroom or the service bay?
That was to expand the service department.
Okay, so in this case, you're actually increasing the size of the office and parts, and then decreasing whatever future expansion you would have had in the original plans for the service bays.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so that's a good thing to point out to any members of the listening audience, that the potential would have been higher. You would have had more service in the old plan than in the new plan.
Right.
May I ask?
I came in thinking that we were increasing the parking lot area, but it appears that's not actually happening. So that's another mitigating factor that I think is agreeable for me as a potential approver. I did want to ask about the landscaping changes. Is it due to the error that was made by the demolition contractor? It seems like the replacement that we're asking for is reasonable, or that staff is asking for is reasonable. But I'm wondering, does it make sense for it to come from screening that was otherwise in the plan for the residential neighborhood to the west? Should it instead be considered an additional requirement to put in those trees and not reduce the requirement in other parts of the site?
And the contractor that removed the trees by accident, they're willing to take care of, if they have to replace that, they're willing to foot that expense for us. So their bites are not, they understand they made a mistake. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't cost me anything if the council decides that they want additional up and beyond what we're doing, what's proposed.
I like the proposed replacements. I think that plan looked good. But again, I just wouldn't want to see the screening that we had on the other side of the site reduced to make it possible. I guess I had one more question on that. The tree requirements in the ordinance, And I am by no means an expert in this. I have noticed that my own linden trees get destroyed by Japanese beetles every time that they come out in July. I'm wondering if that's something we want to consider, maybe removing that option for the larger tree requirement that is in 12B. But I will defer to somebody who knows more about how these will be cared for.
And I know, is that Dean who's been
It's
wanting
Dean.
to
Yes.
speak? Can unmute him.
Dean, if you want to go ahead. Oh, Dean, I
Now
think
he's
you're
muted again.
no, I think you've muted yourself.
This is the applicant, Dean?
No, Dean Jacobs
Oh, okay.
had raised his hand.
Well, while we're waiting for him, can I ask Kendra a couple questions?
Of course.
So I think I may have read through this quick and missed something here. There was something about lighting, about the height of the light poles in the original approval, and they exceeded the height of the building. Is that going to be corrected in this, that they wouldn't exceed the height of the building?
Yes. Yes, they've given us details about the light fixtures now between September and now, and the details do show compliance with that.
Okay. And then I had another question with the resolution. I was reading the resolution and I was trying to jog my memory, and I went back and watched the video of the meeting. I didn't watch the full video. I watched the video from the point where we talked about the approval of the resolution with modifications. So in resolution 16, we talk about the sign lighting shall comply with city code, and the wall sign shall not be lit outside of business hours. I guess I had it in my head that the pendant, the podium light that was there along 101 would fall under the same restriction, that wouldn't be lit after business hours as well.
I believe that the resolution as drafted accurately reflects the minutes, but we certainly can check that the original approvals still apply. We can play the tape and make sure, but I believe that it was specifically wall signage.
Would it be unfair to ask the applicant if he would consider that as part of this amendment? I know it's not in there, but it's just a clarification with regards to that. I don't know if you need to advertise after midnight your place of business, but
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're splitting hairs here, but I was under the understanding that any signage we had was to go off at night.
okay, so you're understanding that all signage would go off after midnight.
So if there's some confusion in the wording, I guess you can clarify, but that was my understanding.
Okay, so if you're fine with that, you'd have no problem if we just change that item 16 in the resolution to say all signage?
Yeah, that's no problem. That's no problem.
All right, I thank you for that consideration.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, just clarify the parking issue, the mistake on our end. I think just copying over his calculations from the site plan, the new site plan say 125, the old site plan say 131, but some of the parking we didn't count as parking, it was storage area, which is how we got that other number. So that's on me. The parking actually, the way he calculated, is reduced by 4 from the September plan to this plan.
Gotcha.
Very good. Thank you.
Makes sense. Is there anything else, Alan or Jeremy?
So I guess I would propose that we change the draft resolution to not transfer the trees from the west side, but to have the new requirements be additional trees. and then strike the linden as a choice for 12B.
Mr. Mayor, could I clarify or confirm?
Of course.
So do you mean not transfer the trees from the east side to the west side as proposed?
I mean, keep the existing landscape plan intact for everything except for the area where the trees were accidentally removed. And then the requirements that you have in the draft resolution would remain, but they would be additional trees.
That is how it's intended. So if you're not reading that,
I read it how Jeremy did too, so I get what you're saying. But see, Kendra, you're saying those trees wouldn't be removed to go there. It would be keeping the landscaping that's supposed to be there, plus adding these.
correct.
Okay.
So I'm reading the resolution, thinking about how we could say that differently. The only difference was my suggestion from my landscape architect is some of the trees in the front along 101 that were part of the approved landscape plan, we want to move to other locations so that the spaded trees can live, so they're not too crowded. But the total number of trees is the approved landscape plan plus the 6 new big trees and those shrubs.
You want to move the smaller trees that you were going to require to be planted on the east side,
right,
to other locations.
Should we change 12 to say revise the approved landscape plan to relocate? Would that clarify if we added the word approved in front of landscape plan on line 1 of 12?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we will have more trees planted.
Okay. I think now that I understand it being walked through, I think I understand what it's trying to say. I think it's clear. I was, I think, confused by the graphic. I didn't realize the direction of the arrows pointing away from that location. I thought it was going the other way. So that makes sense now. Thank you.
All right, so we're good with how 12's worded then.
Yes.
Okay.
Are you still wanting to leave in the removal of linden trees? I guess I'm not an arborvitae, so I wouldn't, or arborist, I couldn't say either way, but if you're gonna take one out, yeah, I mean, that thing is they want four different species here, just for the fact of if disease comes in, it doesn't take out all the trees or 2/3 of the trees, but.
Well, we're adding 3 trees and there are 4 choices. So you'd only be planting 3 of them anyway.
Okay. That makes sense, Kendra?
Yeah, if you want to delete little leaf linden as an option, you certainly can. I think our landscape architects are very comfortable with it, but they still have options with the red maple, sugar maple, and hackberry to find 3 trees of the required size. So if you've had some experience not liking those, we certainly can remove that.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
It is anecdotal, but every linden that I've had has been attacked every year. So.
Well, maybe they'll start making Nelson maple syrup now. So then the other change would have to be 16. Item 16, just instead of saying wall signage, and just change it to all signage. With those changes, I'd move a motion forward to approve the site plan as amended.
I'll second that. And we'll just do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Alrighty. The next one is one we cannot do because we do not have more members, right, Kendra? This is for the easement.
Correct, Mr. Mayor, but I would suggest, because it is a public hearing and notices were sent, that we probably want to take public comments. And so with your permission, I'd just quickly highlight it, and then we could continue it to either the next meeting or the February 25th meeting.
Perfect. That sounds good.
So this is a public hearing to vacate an easement for Nelson International. And this is for I'm sorry, I'm not on my full screen anymore, sorry. I have more appreciation for Jessica tonight now. To vacate the drainage and utility easement on the back half of this lot 1, block 5, Bellwether Second. We always require wetland and drainage and utility easements over wetlands. As part of this project, this large wetland here, which had a drainage and utility easement deeded with Bellwether, the applicant was able to modify the eastern boundary of that wetland. And so we had requested that they vacate that easement so that there wasn't an encroachment of the parking lot into the easement. So this is the existing easement, and there was a tiny bit right here that they were authorized to fill and build the parking lot over. So we would vacate this easement that was deeded with Bellwether and get this new larger easement as part of this plat, which would cover the edge of the wetland boundary and the stormwater ponds that are in these two locations. So that would be part of the site plan approval. That was a contingency on the resolution you just approved. But again, approval of an easement vacation requires a 4/5 vote. So tonight we would just ask that you open the public hearing and then continue it to a date certain for this item.
All righty. Thank you, Kendra. So yeah, we will open the public hearing, and Jessica, if anyone wants to speak, raise your hand or press the *9, and Jessica will acknowledge you.
Thank you, Mayor. No one is raising their hand at the moment, but we could give them a moment.
Sure, let's give it a few more seconds.
Mayor and Council, just looking at the upcoming agendas, I would recommend the February 11th meeting. The February 25th meeting is pretty jam-packed, although it should be a quick item, but one less item.
Sounds good. And do you just need our, if that works, you need a motion on that to push it out to that meeting?
If we could get a motion, that'd be great.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to continue to table this till the February 11th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'd make a recommendation to staff to put it up early if we're going to have on that deal, if we're going to have West Side Tire on the agenda.
Yeah. Sounds good. We need a motion to close the public hearing. I'll make that motion.
Mr. Mayor, actually, since we're continuing it, we do not close it. That motion just continues it forward.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Then we will move on to item 8B. I'm sorry, that is what we just did. One second here, I apologize. I have my notes backwards. (8C), which is the PUD sketch plan review for the Van Blarencom and Schober properties.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an opportunity requested by the applicant to solicit informal comments on a PUD sketch plan. So the comments tonight are non-binding, but are really important for the applicant to be able to make decisions about investments. The PUD sketch plan is for 193 single-family homes. 123 of those units would be an extension and infill of the Bellwether development, which is villa homes with association maintenance. And then the western 72 units would be new single-family housing that would not be part of the Bellwether project. On the screen is the Van Blarencom property here, and the Schober property is surrounded by the Bellwether project right here, south of Stieg Road. The concept would expand the Bellwether project. An EAW was performed when the Bellwether project was proposed back in 2018. The Environmental Quality Board state rules have thresholds for mandatory EAWs, and Bellwether did meet that threshold. The new project does not meet the threshold for a new EAW, and when combined with the existing Bellwether, does not meet the threshold for a new EIS. As I said in the staff report, I worked with our city engineer to review the rules, which guidance is not crystal clear on the process. I did speak to EQB staff who noted that the city is the RGU and has broad discretion in how to proceed. And our recommendation remains as outlined in the staff report. This does not trigger an EAW, but we do recommend that as part of the feasibility study that will be required to review infrastructure improvements, we do a memo that we've done on other projects for similar situations, which is to review this new portion of the project against the adopted EAW, meaning permits that were identified as being required in the EAW. We would measure against this project and apply the same mitigation strategies to this project. And again, I have reviewed this with the EQB who has no objection to that approach. And the rules, they've made note that the rules should provide a bit more guidance when they update the rules next time. This exhibit shows the new concept. So here are some new villa homes on the Schober property, which would tie in. This is the entrance off of existing entrance off of Stieg. So this is a new villas here. And then the road would be extended and continue around the park with these villa units. On the northwest, there are the 72 single family homes that are not connected to the project. And Pulte is intentional about that. These folks in the villas have association maintenance. They're part of the clubhouse. These would be a different single family neighborhood, not paying association dues and being part of that association. The project does propose new accesses onto Stieg Road. The project is, this red star here is low density residential, like the property for Bellwether, which allows development at 3 to 5 units an acre. And their concept would be to rezone the villa portion that's going to be an extension of Bellwether as PUD and be subject to all the Bellwether PUD standards. And then rezone the single family to RSF3, which is 7,500 square foot minimum lot size with 65-foot lots. At this point, they do not believe they need a PUD for their single family and would follow straight zoning standards for that portion of the project. Again, this image highlights a little more clearly the light blue being the existing Bellwether development, the yellow, the single family neighborhood, and the green, the addition to the Bellwether development, which includes some parkland. And you can see on this image, for those who weren't involved in the original approval, there's a neighborhood park in this portion of the site that leads into a larger open space park in this area. The villa homes will follow the same architectural standards as Bellwether if it proceeds. The single family homes are more traditional single family homes, slightly larger. We have not reviewed this for compliance with our ordinance standards, but generally appear to be consistent with the standard zoning requirements. One of the issues that needs to be resolved for this project is when Bellwether was approved, we needed to reach agreement with Maple Grove for them to provide water to the site. And the agreement with Maple Grove as it exists approved water service for the Bellwether project that has already been approved. So we would need to amend that agreement with Maple Grove in order to expand that water service to serve these properties. Pulte has been speaking with Maple Grove, as has city staff, and the city of Maple Grove has indicated a willingness to work towards expanding that agreement. Additionally, what's new since 2018 is the city has been moving forward with the new well studies. A new well site has been identified on the Lothar property, and this park in this project has been identified as a potential well or water tower site to serve Northeast Corcoran. The access, as I mentioned, there are 2 access points currently shown onto Stieg Road for this new development, one on the west end and one sort of on the east side of the project. As part of the feasibility study, Public Works recommends that we look at making this a temporary access and planning the ultimate access point at 1/4 mile spacing between this proposed road and this existing road. So somewhere in here. This property is not part of the project, is not controlled by Pulte. But if we plan for a road to extend here, that would allow an alignment should the Stieg property on the north side ever develop in the future. And so we wanted to highlight that for council and for the applicant's knowledge that we'd want to look at that in the feasibility study. Additionally, Public Works would like to look at eliminating these cul-de-sacs and making that a through connection, just making it easier for long-term maintenance.
Isn't that one cul-de-sac long for emergency vehicles? I thought we liked shorter, yeah.
Because of this turnaround and the fact that it has a cul-de-sac turnaround, public safety was fine with this.
Okay.
Because we have 2 ways in to the site. They certainly support the Public Works request to connect these 2.
Okay.
But they were comfortable with that extension. And certainly in part, I suspect it's due to this regional trail that winds through here that also can serve as a emergency access if needed. But they were fine with that. They did not have any comments on this concept plan beyond the Public Works comments. As I mentioned, the trail, Three Rivers Park District, as you know, is continuing to work on finalizing the Diamond Lake Regional Trail Corridor alignment. And Brad and staff met with Three Rivers to talk about some alternatives. And so we would continue to work with them and the developer to finalize the alignment. Our trail plan shows the trail coming up here and then extending up Robert ultimately to the city of, I think that's Robert Street, all the way up to Rogers. I think the Three Rivers trail suggests that it comes through the Stieg property and on the west side of that large wetland complex. So something that we all just want to be aware of and that we would continue to work through if the project moved forward. As I said, with the original Bellwether, we had a master parks plan. They dedicated a significant parkland for the open space park and have already deeded the land for a portion of this neighborhood park. The original plan showed this concept. It's a little bit hard to see, but showed this concept, which had this parkland border. So there was a wider access into the park here off this new public street than is currently shown now. And staff and the Parks Commission have talked about this being an entrance into a small parking lot. This is a neighborhood park, but this is a big neighborhood. And neighborhood park will serve people outside of the Bellwether development as well. And so we want to make the park welcoming, not closed off from the public. And so if we eliminate a few of the lots here, we can open up the park to a view shed and allow a parking lot in here, a small parking lot, which has yet to be designed, but would allow more access. So we'd like to continue to work with them to eliminate some of these lots for a larger park entrance there. But in general, the park plan is generally consistent with the dedication anticipated as part of the original Bellwether approvals. I again use the opportunity to note this is a search site for a potential city water tower as well. And so as we continue to move forward and look at that, we want to look at how that might impact homes too, and that might impact how Pulte decides to lay out the site as well. So again, that was a high-level review. There's more information in your packet from the applicant and from me, but next steps would be if the council was supportive, the city would work with the applicant and complete a feasibility study and an EAW review. Then the applicant could proceed with the formal applications. The first set of applications would be a zoning map amendment, the preliminary plat, and for the Villa portion, the preliminary PUD development plan approval. As proposed, the single family homes now, that section does not require a PUD, and as proposed now would be straight zoning, which would just be a preliminary plat. Then for the villa portions, the applicant would submit a final step of a final plat and PUD development plan. And for the single family, just a final plat application. So again, I would be happy to answer more questions. The applicant is online as well, but the purpose of the concept plan is really for the council to provide direction to the applicant. Any comments that you give them are advisory only and non-binding, but certainly are important as they prepare their formal submittal. So with that, Mr. Mayor, Council, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kendra. Alan or Jeremy, do you have anything off the bat you'd like to mention?
Jeremy, you want to go first or you want me to go?
I'll defer to the former planning commission member.
Oh, thank you. Too kind. I guess some of the concerns I have are around the protection of that Diamond Lake Trail area and easement. And that area too currently has a snowmobile trail going through it. So I would love to see some way that we could design a trail going through there to keep snowmobiles trails in there, whether so that trail may have to be shifted to the west to follow that wetland, but that's a major trail corridor that connects Northwest Hennepin County Trail System to Dayton, down to Mama G's, down to into Corcoran. I rode it just last Sunday, and it is, you know, it's a great trail to ride. If anyone's out there with a snowmobile, I'd encourage you to do it. I think we need to protect that ability to have the option for a water tower in that area as well. And the city park thing, I totally agree with you. That has to be planned so that it's open and inviting to the greater community. It's sitting right in the middle of Bellwether, which is age restricted living space. And now you're going to have families with a bunch of little kids, not only moving into that new development, but also coming from the surrounding developments in Corcoran, because there is no city parks up that way. They're going to go to that park to use it. And I don't know what's in Northwest Maple Grove in that area, if there's parks there, but we could get some overflow from people from Maple Grove coming into our parks, which is fine. You know, we have people going into Maple Grove parks, so other cities, you know, it's there for the kids. That's the whole idea of it. So it would be nice to see that. And I don't know if the park can be shifted more or if that's the location it has to be, but it has to be open and inviting. So that's kind of my observations at this point.
Yeah, I would agree that was kind of the first thing that jumped out at me when I was looking through this, was of being in the middle of any particular development. Bellwether seems to kind of be the biggest conflicting uses of a 55 plus community, but a park right in the middle of it. And I think it looks great and it'd be great, but I think we need to make sure that it is clear that it's open and accessible to everyone in the community.
I think one thing to remember too about that Diamond Lake Trail, Three Rivers had a concept, and I think it's a great concept, to make that a destination trail. And to me, a destination trail does not go through somebody's backyard. I mean, I'm not gonna get in my car and take my bike to a trail system just to ride through a bunch of homes.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think you're right. The ability to shift it so it's more out of the neighborhood would be preferred. It's interesting that Three Rivers is saying to go through the neighborhood. I'm guessing it might be related to something they intend to do up in the Stieg Woods area. But if we could find a way to bypass most of the homes, I think that would make the trail experience better, and also make it better for the residents in Bellwether, who probably don't want to see a bunch of lycra-clad bikers like me on occasion riding through their neighborhood continuously. I would support the snowmobile preservation as well to the degree that we can. I think that would be really a shame if you can't do that because of where the trail is sited.
I think we can go out on a limb and say that Councilman Bottoма would probably agree were he here today. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have much else to add and what's been said.
I do want to give kudos to the Pulte developer for, of the new developments that I've been through personally in Corcoran, from Ravinia to Vacate Crossing and Bellwether. I think it's done the best job of trying to preserve some open space and some natural vistas. Not to, call any other developments out, but I think they just do a really good job with the fishing pier and opening onto some hardwood forest they tried to maintain. I really appreciate that. As a resident and as a counselor, I'd like to see that preserved as well in the new plan, but as much as they can. I would also add that the council in its goal setting session has been talking about what can we do to better incorporate the natural character of the existing landscape. And I think Bellwether's done a really good job of that, but that's an ongoing value we want to see improved. So if there are things that can be done in the feasibility study that would accentuate that or increase that, I think the council would look on those favorably. And just for the sake of transparency, I also want to say one of the things we've had on the table, because we haven't seen a great alignment of actual development to that vision, we've talked about the idea of a moratorium as a way to reshape the code to better foster it. That hasn't been committed by any means, but it's been discussed. So I just want to make sure that the developer is aware that that is a possibility. The intent is to better preserve open spaces, the natural character, and deal with some of the other things that we've seen. And all of that is public record in the goal setting session. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go ahead and look at those. But I just want to make sure that is communicated clearly.
I guess I would like to know from Bellwether, so of the projects they've had in these age restricted communities, how many they've put a non-age restricted community right next to and actually have streets that interconnect with that? And if they have, what type of pushback have they got from the residents of the age restricted community? I'm sure some of them wanted to move to an age restricted community because they didn't want to have kids running up and down their street. They moved away from their grandkids for an hour's worth of relief each night, and now they're going to have kids again. But I'm not saying that's bad in any way, shape, or form. It's just that's what that market was targeted for, an age restricted community. There wasn't going to be young people living in it, and now they're proposing putting one right up next to it. So
would it have roads that are connecting? The streets wouldn't actually be connecting between the two.
They'd have to go down Stieg and go around.
Right.
To get in there.
Gotcha.
Mayor, Paul with Pulte is raising his hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
I can.
Well, it's good to be here this evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. It's been 2.5 years since I've been before the City Council. We've got some new faces, so welcome. I appreciate it. For starters, this was a large and very complicated project to take on for both the city and Pulte. It took a long time, a lot of issues to get through, and I'm really proud of the fact that we got there. We committed to an enormous amount of investment in public infrastructure that goes towards serving all of Northeast Corcoran. But we also made a commitment to build a neighborhood unlike any other and to do it at a very high standard. And I'm proud of the fact that we followed through on all those commitments. This is really primarily an extension of that. We didn't know these properties would be available at the time, otherwise we would have included them. But people's minds changed, and here we are again, looking to create a nice addition to the Bellwether neighborhood and also create a separate nice single family neighborhood. So it's really good to be here. Let me try to answer a couple of your questions here. Councilmember Schultz asked the question, have we commonly had street connections and such between Del Webb neighborhoods and other neighborhoods? Bellwether happens to be the first Del Webb neighborhood in Minnesota, so I really can't point to many others. We are opening our second one down in Shasta this summer. Typically, oddly enough, when I asked my 88-year-old mother, what did you like when you visited your friends in Sun City, Arizona, at Del Webb neighborhoods? And the first thing out of her mouth was, it feels safe and secure. And, for people like me, I don't initially think that way about that's the kind of place I want to live at. But it's very important for people as they age. And there's ways that we accomplish that in the design of Bellwether without cutting it off from the community. Yes, there would be a public park in there, and we're certainly open to making some adjustments to make that work well for the city as well. Many of these folks don't want to cut themselves off from society. It's not like you can create a cocoon on any kind of piece of land and totally isolate yourself from the rest. It's more like the illusion of security, through the use of, at times, fences, and at other times, key rows of trees in key areas. Sometimes it's the use of parkways that are heavily landscaped that, again, create that kind of very secluded feeling. So there's a variety of different tools we use to really create the vibe that people are looking for, even though they might not be able to articulate why they like it. But we've learned what those things are. So, it really doesn't bother me about having the public park in this area. This was the logical place that you put on your comp plan map long ago because you knew there was a really nice old wooded area sandwiched between wetlands that really was nice to preserve. So we did preserve those woods and dedicated it to the city and built trails through it. And immediately adjacent to it is a logical place for this neighborhood park that's been envisioned too. So there were really strong reasons why this location was chosen for that woods and that park next to the woods. And we're totally open to some of the comments we've heard about, people love to live on cul-de-sacs. And I'm sure they're willing to pay the extra $2 a year or whatever it is for snow plowing. But if that's an important issue for the city, we'd connect those streets. If it's important to you to create a different entry experience at the public park, we'll work on the plan and make those changes. So we're not opposed to any of those things. So I hope I answered some of your questions. You may have others. I sent along a presentation that was more really informational and contextual, so you can kind of understand what we were trying to accomplish and what we, I believe, did accomplish.
Do you have other Del Webb communities with an open city park inside them and have trail access into them from non-age restricted, non-part of Del Webb?
Well, this is Del Webb #1 in Minnesota. So
yeah, but you've got Del Webb number 28,000 in Arizona,
yes,
right? So
yes,
you've got some experience down there.
I don't have an answer to that question. I imagine there's a wide variety of Del Webb communities, and like anything, you work with the cards you're dealt. So I wouldn't be surprised to find a public park embedded in one of those communities, single family neighborhoods adjacent to it. Every community is unique, and we do our best with it.
All right. Any thoughts on the trail, having that an off road trail?
I agree with the concept that it's a far preferable experience for the trail people to get it away from streets, first of all, priority #1, get it away from backyards to the extent possible, #2. That's always preferable. We're willing, again, to work with the city staff and the Three Rivers Park District staff. I didn't get really excited about, if you recall, the blue line shown on the Three River Parks District map. That did go right through the heart of the neighborhood and go through all the backyards. That one didn't get me very excited. The one that came out of the city park and then went kind of northwesterly towards that large wetland to the west of the neighborhood, that looks like it could be feasible if the Three Rivers is looking for an opportunity where a property is developing like this and it's their opportunity to grab something. We're certainly willing to work with them. However, if they wanted to raise the bar to another level, it might be a different route off this property. So again, you're right. I mean, there's different levels of the experience with parks, with the trails. I think one could be achieved through this property if it's done carefully along the west side. That would be pretty good. But we all know that they could do, a great job on another property. I just don't know if another property is available or developing or, easy to get an easement on.
Well, I appreciate your time and your whole approach to it, and just answering our questions. I think it's great, and I'm looking forward to seeing more in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate the time and consideration so we can absorb this and take those next steps. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. So new business, we'll have another public comment opportunity. If there's anyone that wants to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone who wants to speak can press *9, or you can press the participants button on your computer or tablet and then click raise hand. We don't have anyone raising their hands yet.
All righty. Give me 1 second here. Then we'll go on to 10A, feasibility study for City Center Drive and 79th Place improvements. And Kevin, you're going to take this. Is Kevin on?
Yes.
Yes, Mayor, I am.
There we go.
And Jesse, you're going to pull up the slide presentation? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is Kevin Matson, the Public Works Director. The topic here in front of you at the moment is a request for authorization of a feasibility study, what we're calling City Center Drive and 79th Place improvements. That may be foreign to you because those streets do not exist at the moment. They are part of a proposed development with St. Therese located immediately south of the current City Hall. In December of 2019, the city entered into a land purchase agreement with St. Therese on that property. And more recently, in November of 2020, the city approved a minor subdivision, which would split the existing 8200 County Road 116 property into 3 lots with public right-of-way for street alignments that are consistent with the Southeast Corcoran District Plan and Design Guidelines. So in the meantime, we have been coordinating on and off with a developer, St. Therese, on planning, design, timing of site improvements. We don't want to get too far in front of the horse, but we have reason to believe that we want to recommend the initiation of a feasibility study for these street and utility improvements. Like I said, that we're currently labeling City Center Drive and 79th Place. The names may change later, but that's what is how it's been identified in the downtown study. The proposal, which is attached from Wenck Associates, is for $27,000 to complete this analysis. And the analysis is required for the city to consider potential assessments to adjacent properties. Next slide, please. I believe we have some schematics. These are out of an original feasibility study that was completed for St. Therese a couple of years ago, which really shows the connection of City Center Drive, which is kind of the current south driveway location, just south of the Corcoran Police Department. That would be the main kind of full future intersection, potentially with a signal in the future. And then that City Center Drive kind of arches down to the southeast. And then at the very bottom of that schematic, that's 79th Place. That would likely be a right in, right out. So the street improvements would include turn lanes off of County Road 116 and basically the construction of those roads, along with associated stormwater ponding, and then some analysis on trunk water and trunk sewer. And so that don't get the schematic inside that, the potential St. Therese schematic, that's old and outdated. It is most likely to change from that. The goal there was kind of emphasize the road alignments that we are going to focus on. And then the schematic on the right there, that's from the Southeast District Guidelines, and that kind of shows kind of the vision for the corridor that will be analyzed through the feasibility study for those that aren't familiar with it. Next slide, Jess. I think you went a couple too far. So financing of this project is likely through a combination of sources. We don't know the final percentages, but we are planning to lean heavily on municipal state aid funding, special assessments, and then there will likely be some local participation. So with that, tonight we are looking to consider a motion to approve the proposal from WENC and authorize the Public Works Director to approve any optional services needed. And that's really to kind of streamline the process. We want to design this project concurrently with the developer to really realize cost effectiveness. We just want to do it at the same time. It just makes a lot of sense. So we want to position ourselves tonight so that we can react to their needs, and we feel like this is an appropriate time for that authorization from you guys. With that, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have related to the scope or the project itself.
Sounds good. Thank you. Alan or Jeremy, do you have anything you want to start off with?
Since the project is new to me, thank you for the background, Kevin. Are there any trails as part of this concept? Or is that, I know we talked about having that linear park along 116, and you kind of showed that in your diagram. But that's not part of what's being studied, is that right? This is just the road alignment and how that would lay out?
Correct. Yeah, we really aren't focusing on the linear park at this time. Our focus would be once we know like the dirt balance, if we knew we were long on dirt, we would look to capitalize and maybe get creative, but we would bring any of those, when we had that available information, we bring that back through the Parks Commission and you guys for planning. We're really just kind of leaving that to itself right now and just considering, if there's any utility cores going through it where potential crosses to across 116 to connect other future trails and stuff. So we would, at a very high level, we'd look at it, but any details we'd most certainly bring back through all the commissions and seek public feedback.
Kevin, is the feasibility study for City Center Drive, that extends beyond the adjacent property directly to the south of what St. Teresa acquired, doesn't it? Does that go way down into the adjacent property as close to County Road 10 as far as?
Yeah, ultimately it would connect all the way down to 10 per our Southeast District plan, but the analysis that we're looking at today really is the construction on the construction and turn lanes associated with what's on the existing 8200 County Road 116 property. So really what you see, and that's what I showed you in that schematic, is what the feasibility study is focusing on. Of course, there's some, grades that we look at beyond that, but the primary goal is to figure out what it costs to make these improvements on this property.
So when you're talking about assessments, you're just talking about the directly adjacent properties?
Well, it would be the report would analyze any assessments that in any benefiting properties. So it could be adjacent properties potentially. But was what this feasibility report would lay out for the future decisions on any said assessments. It would set the table and basically the justifications for the benefit along with other information that would come along. So it's premature to really establish that at this point. This is the first step.
Okay, so it wouldn't give you benefit for assessments going out, the second or third property beyond the directly adjacent property to like 70, was it 79th place? You know what I mean? As you keep moving south, there's additional properties that will receive benefit from City Center Drive and 79th place access. And I'm wondering, would we need future feasibility studies to figure out those amounts of assessment or potential benefit?
This is focused on, what stopping at the south property line at 8200 would get. So this
Okay.
a feasibility study would say if we stop the road at the south property line of the existing 8200 property, what are there benefiting properties and what would those benefits be? And there would likely be some appraisals and other things that we'd bring back to you as this process was underway.
Okay.
So this won't, conclusively do that. There's other information that's needed to kind of
Okay.
align with this process, but this is the first step to get us going towards any of those potential options, and we would bring those to you as appropriate.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else? I have nothing to add to that. If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposal from Wank and authorize Public Works Director to approve optional services if needed.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up, we got 10B, Appaloosa Woods Feasibility Study, and we're back to Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor. We have another feasibility study. This is a draft feasibility study, so this is a little further along. It's for a smaller project, but an important project. And it would be potentially a first potential paving of a gravel road in Corcoran. So we're basically nearing the end of the finalizing a recommendation for the feasibility study, and we had some scenarios, some questions, some observations. Really, we just want to have a conversation about and get some direction from council on. So quickly, some background. In April of 2020, the city authorized staff to complete a feasibility study for street improvements in the Appaloosa Woods neighborhood. This neighborhood, for those that don't know, is completely surrounded by Maple Grove, or essentially you have to go through the city of Maple Grove to access it. It is located immediately east of City Hall across the wetland and north of the Rush Creek Golf Course. So it's tucked away. It's a really unique spot. And long ago, I won't get into it, but some of that area annexed into Maple Grove and some of it remained into Corcoran. So we have 17 properties over there that remain within the Corcoran city limits. So, and we did have some preliminary conversations even as early as 2019 with some of the residents and held some neighborhood meetings. And we considered a potential sewer and water improvements with street improvements. But the survey really showed support for a paving project primarily. So that's what the feasibility focused on, with street improvements only. And again, today we're going to look at several items here, go by one that could affect project outcomes and schedule. So first and foremost, I want to make sure it's clear that the feasibility report that has been produced is consistent with the city's adopted special assessment policy that was established before the majority of the council here was on, but that's what we used as our guidance. Next slide, please. So the methodology for this project, and again, it's really converting a gravel road for the most part into a paved road in a cost-effective manner. It would not be curb and gutter. It would stay rural ditches. So really, it's effectively converting the gravel surface into a paved surface. That's the primary goal. The methodology used in this feasibility study was to calculate the cost or assessments basically on a per lot basis. And that was really chosen to be what we believe to be, for this specific project, the most fair and equitable manner. There are other options. If you look in there, you could do it by front footage. You can do it by a combination. Staff and our engineering consultant are leaning towards this as the most or most fair and equitable manner. And how is that calculated? You essentially take the total project cost divided by the number of lots in your project area, and that equals your assessment. So our draft assessment in this case is a little over $9,000 per lot. So assuming just kind of pause there, is there any concern with that approach, or would you like any further conversation about potential other approaches? If I may ask that question and kind of pause each bullet point.
I appreciate that, Kevin. There is an option, or I imagine there's an option for a homeowner to spread this out over X number of years in their property taxes. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's typically you can either pay up front, or we would offer I don't know, Brad, if you can correct me, I'm blanking on the term, but basically more or less a finance plan that would allow them to spread it over a said period, and we would have to work to establish that and what we're going to offer. Correct.
Correct. So typically, when we've talked about this in the past, we've discussed something like 10 years with at some interest rate, which has typically been 1% over the city's borrowing rate. With this project, we likely would not borrow, but we could use a recently used bonding rate.
Mm-hmm. And in this neighborhood, Maple Grove is redoing their streets at the same time. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. This summer they have plans to do a street improvement around it, and that's one of the reasons why we're targeting this summer for an improvement. We'll get to that later. I'm a little out of sequence, but correct.
Are we achieving any cost savings by doing it in partnership with them?
We believe we could. Yep. Yeah. If we can hold that conversation, it'll come up later.
Okay.
But you're correct. You're going down this path of where we believe we can realize cost savings.
And my only question was regarding the term on the assessments as well. So, but yeah, we'll save that for future discussion.
Okay, I can move on to kind of the next kind of key point here. So in this feasibility report, there are some maximum assessed benefits that are reached for several properties, which ultimately results in some cost share for the city of Corcoran in general, or the local participating cost. We don't find them to be unreasonable. Right now, they're in the draft report at a little over 12,500. So pretty close to one lot equivalent. So reasonable city contribution from staff perspective. And I will note, I think that if you go to the next slide, there's some clarification to that. And that's really a result. So if you see kind of the white addresses there, they are maxed out at the $9,004. So that's that methodology we use on the maximum charge per lot. That's the maximum kind of cost per lot. The properties that are grayed back, they've achieved the maximum assessed benefit per our letter of benefit that we received for this project. And that's a byproduct of 90% of the low range of the benefit value. So those are all properties that have existing pavement in front of them where the pavement's getting replaced. They have a lower benefit valuation than properties that go from gravel to pavement. So they are basically capped at 7,200 or 90% the low end of the range of the benefit. So,
Kevin,
yep.
The properties with existing pavement in front of them, is that a full replacement of pavement, or is that a mill and replace?
That would actually be remove the pavement, make sure the base is solid, any corrections, and put a full new pavement section on top. So it would be more than a mill and overlay.
Okay.
So basically the difference between $9,004 and $7,200 over however many properties there, that's the resulting city contribution effectively. And this is consistent with our policy and state statute, how this is calculated. So just kind of highlighting how we come up with that and how the assessments would, preliminary assessments would roll out. We'll get into this a little bit later, but we would revise these after potentially we get actual bids, but this is the preliminary assessment amount based on the cost estimate and analysis. Any questions? Oh, okay.
I was just going to say, so those ones that are at 9,495 that are maxed out, if bids come in higher than expected, they're still maxed out at 9,000.
No, they're maxed out. That 9,400 is the total project cost divided by the 17 properties. So if the bids came in 10,000 higher, that number could go up 10,000 divided by 17.
Okay.
But the gray ones that are capped at 7,200 stay capped at 7,200
Oh,
because
okay.
they're at the 90% of the low end of the range of the benefit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I had the two backwards then. Okay.
Yep.
So then city contribution would go up on those gray properties.
Yes,
Yep.
because it would cover the gap. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense.
And if you look at the assessment, this project's a little unique because we have a high number of, the improvement is a little bit of a lower value improvement versus a little bit larger number of lots. So this is a kind of a unique scenario to have, but it can happen in the rules and in our policy. So every we just discussed with Pulte, every neighborhood's different, every project's different, but we stick to our adopted assessment policy, and that's the backbone for the assessment. We need to be able to justify that through the process.
Okay. Can I ask you, what's the useful life of this road surface before it has to be milled and overlaid? And I thought we gave like the first milling and overlay was free, and then the second one we assess that. Do I have that right?
Correct. I don't know if we have, so we basically identified streets that when that policy got put in place, we identified streets that basically had never had an overlay that were pavement. So we would have to have, in my mind, we'd have to have a conversation about, do we give this one that same benefit, or did this fall under essentially a gravel road that now we're starting fresh? So it is a little bit nuanced because I believe that policy was established on existing paved neighborhoods that never had one for 15 years, and now we're starting to do them. And does that make sense? So I think we'd have to have that discussion. We could say you get one free one. We just have to probably amend the agreement because we don't have 81st place. I don't believe is on that list. I'd have to verify, and we can get back to you on that. But
well, I guess what I was trying to get at with my question in a roundabout way is, so we're going to assess them, and obviously it's to the owner's benefit with a lower assessment. I mean, they're paying interest on it, but if they can spread those payments out as long as they can, right, that lowers their tax burden from year to year. But you don't want to get in a situation where they're paying on assessment for the initial laydown of asphalt, and now they're paying an assessment on the milling of it, So I guess that's what I was wondering is, can they expect to see the first milling after the 10-year mark?
yeah, I mean, I think that would be the goal. We have to, quite honestly, establish a program where we lay that out. But I would say 8 to 10 years is not unreasonable to do a first mill and overlay. And I would be surprised due to the needs that we have in the community that we would get there much before 10. It'd be probably more like 10 to 15 years, honestly. But yeah, that could be part of the conversation when we establish kind of the payback window or the 10-year window. But to get your answer, I mean, the design goal is 15 to 20-year lifespan for this. I mean, it's it's kind of our low cost pavement plan. So it's not, it's trying to be economical and achieve some cost effective ways to pave roads. It's not, it's not a new road in a development or anything like that. It's a way that we make a change where we can lower maintenance cost. One other point I should include it in the for background information is that currently we pay the city of Maple Grove to basically grade this road for us because it's such a it's such out of the way loop for us, and they really don't have any gravel roads left. So they've stated to us that they plan on discontinuing their grader, and we would need to assume grading operations over there. So that's another motivating factor that should be considered, that staff strongly supports finding a way to pave this road.
They'll continue to plow.
Yes, I believe they will continue to plow. That's less of a burden for them. It would probably be more of a burden to turn the plows around and and go back. But yeah, it's strictly due to their eliminating of the grow grader, which I guess we can't really gripe about too much if it's their only road in Maple Grove. So
okay, thank you.
So from us, do you just need direction? You know.
Yeah, I think I got that. I have more topics here, so I think if there's nothing on what we just talked about, I'll continue on. If Jessica can move forward, please. And I just wanted to point out here. Here's a schematic. It's in the draft feasibility report. Very unique area. There are kind of two isolated. You could argue there's at least two mainly isolated properties that basically Maple Grove surrounds, for lack of a better word, and they're identified on this figure. Next slide, Jess. So we have treated them, they're 2 of the 17. So we included those 2 properties and grouped them into this neighborhood of 17 residents. So they are included just like all the other ones in this report. So they are a pavement to pavement assessment capped at 7,200. Like Councilmember Nichols brought up, Maple Grove is planning a street improvement project for the neighborhood completely surrounding it in 2021. And we would like some direction on potentially pursuing some sort of cost share agreement with Maple Grove that would basically incorporate our project into theirs. Their project is huge. We would realize some cost savings, something like we maybe bid our project as an alternative, so we could, clearly delineate who was paying for what, and some of the other costs kind of on a prorated basis. But we would like to at least have a preliminary agreement before we finalize, or work towards a preliminary agreement with them before we finalize this feasibility report. So some guidance there and support for kind of having a cooperative project, and likely due to their project being larger, they would lead it and we would compensate them back for it, is the vision that I would see. Staff recommends, we believe we'd see fairly significant cost savings on that. That was kind of incorporated into this draft feasibility. So I want to be cautious. I don't know that the numbers are going to significantly drop, but if we did it on our own, they might actually bump up more. So just kind of an anecdotal piece there you should consider. If there is not support by council for Corcoran improvements, Maple Grove has mentioned that they are considering a request for compensation for these isolated properties. That was one thing that staff, we wanted to get council's input on. We would likely need to assess them if we wanted to get any special assessment from them, and that would have to be coordinated through an agreement with the city attorney and whatnot. It's less of a point in our mind if we're going to do Corcoran's project. So I guess my first, I don't think we need to spend a lot of brain cells on it if we're supportive of the project, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, makes sense.
Next slide, Jess. And then this is really the last kind of topic. It's really related to special assessment approach and when you finalize the assessment. So the city has some discretion in the process, which we would establish when we finalize the feasibility report, is when do we want to set the final assessment. We can do that after we receive bids. We would notice everyone, work with the neighborhood again. We can set it then, know any potential challenges we might see from the property owners, and then make a decision on awarding the contract at that point, because usually you have 90 days to make a decision on contract award. So we would have some time to see how many potential challenges we would get. It's not unexpected to get a challenge on 17 properties. So that's our recommendation. It's just, more data when you go to authorize the contract. Alternatively, there is an option to assess or finalize the assessments after construction. So that would just be based off of final cost. that is also an option that we could talk about if there was support for it. And again, I think the primary reason for the recommendation is it's just a little easier. This project is not as complicated in terms of actual improvement. We don't have underground utilities where there's more unknowns. A lot of the work is on the surface, so we don't anticipate any big fluctuations or change orders in the field. There's no guarantee, but when you look at suite of projects, this one probably has less unknowns than some. So that kind of bases into our recommendation. Well, if we're going to be challenged on 2 lots, that's $20,000. Is the city comfortable with another $25,000 potential contribution should something, not go our way, even though we do everything in accordance with the policy? So that's kind of the recommendation, but they're all alternatives. If you wanted to consider that, we would want to know upfront when we establish the final report.
I would agree with the recommendation to do it after receiving bids as opposed to after construction. For all the reasons you just stated, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I would agree. One question, Kevin. Since they're doing Maple Grove's homes at the same time, are we expecting any significant resistance from the Corcoran residents based upon your initial conversations last year? When I lived in Maple Grove, their policy was a little different than Corcoran's, so their neighbors are going to probably see lower fees based upon the city carrying more of the project. I'm wondering if that might inspire a little more resistance, just so that we're prepared to deal with that when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's all part of it. Great comments. I believe, Maple Grove goes through the same process. I believe they have like a 50% city contribution, so they would basically buy down 50%. So you are correct. The Maple Grove is just set up financially differently. I would not be surprised if we had a challenge, just because that can happen. But we had Brad can maybe elaborate on this. I felt like we had a significant amount of support, at least to pursue the project and learn more about what potential assessments might be. So once we kind of distribute that and re-engage the neighborhood, we would have a better sense of any pushback. We haven't done that. We kind of wanted to bring it to you guys first before we, engage the public further. I guess more to come, but it's not uncommon to have someone, feel that the value is not there, but it's project dependent. So we don't know yet completely.
Mayor and Council and Kevin, just to add on a couple of things there. I agree with everything Kevin said. Now with the Maple Grove project, it's a much more significant project. They're tearing up the road and new infrastructure, curb and gutter. So my brief conversations with them is their assessments will likely be higher than ours. However, it's a more substantial project. So I think it's still, subsidized more, but their assessment is likely higher. So, however you want to, go with that number there. Regarding the potential challenges, they can arise, but that's exactly the reason the previous council said use 90% of the low end of the benefit. You're using less than the low end of the benefit. So that's a pretty high bar for someone to make a challenge that a court would agree with. So it's a really good, safe position for the city to be in.
Thank you.
Kevin, can I ask on the recommended receiving after bids? So if we finalize the assessments at that point, bids come in and there's some type of change order that costs are driven up, does that additional cost then just get taken on by the city? You can't redo the assessments, right?
No.
Okay.
No, and yeah, you're correct.
And to add to that, we typically wouldn't anyway, because we're using the benefit to the property. So if the benefit is really capped, no matter if there are extra costs to the property, but they're still getting a gravel to paved or paved to paved. So,
okay.
In this case, it potentially could change them because there is some cap yet to go. So this is a bit unique in that, but typically we're using the benefit, which doesn't change if the project goes up typically.
There's cap to go in those properties that were on gravel, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that's, like Brad said, that's unique to this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're correct in your understanding of what would happen.
Okay. That's fine. And like you said, it's a pretty it's a pretty simplistic project. There shouldn't be any real surprises to it. And I think it would be more beneficial to the homeowner to know what their assessment's going to be up front versus after the construction. And they go, well, you finished it, now you're telling me about it. When do assessments typically start then? So if the project is completed, let's say in the fall of 2021, that hits tax year 2022. Okay.
That's correct. There's a deadline. Jessica would know, November something.
November 15th of any year, as long as it's done before that.
So they would have till November 15th of 2022 to either pay it in full or to pay it over the time period.
They would have it until November 15th of 2021 if we moved forward with it this year, or we would be able to any year, as long as they pay before November 15th of any year, we would no additional interest would be charged, and we just charge principal.
Okay.
If they decide to prepay, we don't.
Okay, so they could
pay the entire amount.
They could prepay the entire amount and be done at any point.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right.
We're almost done. I appreciate your patience and comments. And this is just a recap. So we would likely finance this project through special assessments and local participation. And as one suggestion would be the asphalt fund to support the city contribution. And we've kind of, the last several years, we've been rolling over kind of some of the maintenance project funds into that for this specific intention, really. So that would be something where we would look to pull that city contribution from. Next slide. I think there may be one more, or that's it. Nope, that's it. So that's really what we are looking for, is a good dialogue. So I appreciate the feedback. I think we have enough to move forward. If there's any other questions or comments, I'd take them now.
Not from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Kevin.
Thank you.
All righty. And we'll go on to 10C, Bellwether Park Improvement Project, the boardwalk, and Brad will be presenting this.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. We figured staff could use a few more projects, so we thought we'd bring this one forward to you. This is a planned boardwalk near the Bellwether development, and the left side there, slide there really shows the open space park, neighborhood park, and then that east-west connection through that wetland area was a planned connection well before Bellwether came with. And then on the right-hand side is a draft design of the boardwalk connecting the open space park to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. Really brief here. So the Parks and Trails Commission has discussed this initial design for a couple of years now, off and on, talking about what a boardwalk design should look like, have railings, not have railings, and we're to the point of moving forward. So more recently, the Parks and Trails Commission was asked, okay, we know everything we need to know. There's lots of demands in the city for parks and trails. We know that the open space park isn't entirely designed yet and homes still need to be constructed around it. So with that knowledge, do you want to move forward with this project in 2021, or do you want to defer it to future years? And it was unanimous that they felt it was important to get moving on this boardwalk project sooner rather than later. We estimate the cost to be around $350,000 to $450,000. Most of that will be part of a developer contribution. As part of their park dedication contribution, there's an overall cap. So at some point they hit the cap, and then the city's needs to fund things beyond that. And so we believe there is a city possible contribution of between $100,000 and $200,000 beyond what the developer will pay for. And with that, we do have a park dedication fund with a balance of over $800,000. At that time, I did note on the report, there's not a shortfall of places to spend that money. City Park, Ravinia Open Space Park, the Open Space Park and Neighborhood Park in Bellwether, potentially Town Square Park, and trails along County Road. So there's a lot of need for what appears to be a big chunk of money. But when you figure, a boardwalk can take care of half of that, it's not that much actually. So really looking forward to the council. Next slide, please, Jessica, and the last slide. If you agree with the Parks and Trails Commission to direct staff to begin design work for the boardwalk, including getting quotes, and then direct the Parks and Trails Commission to review those quotes and make a recommendation to the council. And on top of that, Jessica Christensen Buck has been looking into potential grant opportunities. And then we'd also like the authorization to seek and apply for grant funds to reduce those costs if possible. So those are the action items. If you agree with Parks and Trails Commission on the use of those funds for 2021, and then approving us to hopefully not use them.
All right. I would tend to agree with the Parks and Trails Commission's recommendation to go forward with this. Like you said, there's no shortage of good parks and places to use some of that money, but I think this is, from what I've seen, a really nice option.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, of course.
How does this align with the Three Rivers Diamond Lake Trail? Is there any potential that this could be incorporated into their program and maybe get some funding from that?
Not this one. Great question. This would be a local connection that would essentially get to their trail. So they want to put their trail to hit our open space park. They have no desire to head out this way through a neighborhood to a county road. So they really want to stick and go kind of north, like we talked about with the Pulte concept plan tonight.
If Paul from Pulte is on, you can tell him that a 10-foot wide boardwalk is wide enough to get a snowmobile groomer down. I have no other questions or comments.
All right. Well, then I will, Brad, can we do all this in one motion, or do you need separate motions?
One motion is just fine.
Perfect. Then I will entertain a motion to direct staff to begin design work for the boardwalk construction in 2021, including obtaining quotes for construction, and direct Parks and Trails Commission to review quotes and make a recommendation to council, as well as authorizing city staff to seek grant funding to reduce city costs.
So moved.
Second.
And we'll just do roll call. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. 10D, 2021 legislative priorities. Brad.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Next slide, Jessica. Thank you. So typically the City Council does adopt legislative priorities each year for the session. The session did already start on January 4th, but knowing a new council was coming on, I kind of held it back until more recently. And on top of that, we do have the League of Minnesota Cities and Metro Cities advocating for us. And this is definitely not a comprehensive list, but the recommendations in front of you, some are pretty similar from years past. General government is a category where we want to maintain local control as much as possible, reduce unfunded mandates, and ensure there's no levy limits on cities. For transportation, our main priorities would be the creation of a street improvement district, as well as increased state aid funds to help support the city. Next slide, Jess, thank you. Housing and land use, continued authority in deciding land use locally. That's a big threat from the Builders Association. If Paul Hoyer is still on, he can maybe use his peers to take away that. Fiscal reform, local government aid. The city of Corcoran receives $0 in local government aid, and Representative Hertas authored a bill last session that would allocate some of those funds to cities such as us. I did add two more in here. I think at least two more. One regarding the officer and firefighter disability funding, and really supporting funding those programs at the state level, since they are state required unfunded mandates for cities to do so. We've had some recent experience with that one. Next slide, Jessica. School funding, this has been on there for years past, fair and full school funding with 5 school districts in Corcoran. There's vastly different opportunities for those students depending on where they live and where they go to school. And that's been a priority in the past for councils. And then one I added that I neglected to put on, so I just included the entire item here, was broadband expansion. And I'll just read it. The city of Corcoran, while in the metro region, does not have consistent access to high-speed internet. Vast areas of the city are left with inadequate services which are needed to support activities such as distance learning, e-business, telehealth, telemedicine, and more. Funds should be dedicated towards filling this gap. And to that end, there are bills out there right now. House File 14 dedicates $120 million to broadband funding. The governor released his initiative. And thus far, there is no cap on location. It just says it's a bar of speed. If your speeds are this low, you're eligible for grant funds. So we'll keep monitoring that. So I believe that's all I have. Again, it's not comprehensive. We'll react as legislation comes up, but it's nice for me when I go meet with legislators to have this document say, here's the priorities of Corcoran. So looking for a motion to approve these as presented tonight or with amendments.
Sounds good. I'm glad to see the broadband expansion added on there, Brad. I know you mentioned that to me previously, and that's, I think, a big one that I've heard a lot of chatter about, so fingers crossed. But is there anything else, Councilman Schultz or Nichols, they want to add?
I was equally gratified to see broadband expansion. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, I think it's a good list, and we'll obviously be reactionary to whatever happens in our local area in the future. So good start. Hopefully you can get some of them.
Brad, would it be helpful to publish any draft letters on the city website that residents might be able to submit for issues that they are particularly passionate about, just to make it easier for them to get engaged with the state and maybe try to create some motivation?
Absolutely. I mean, the biggest advocacy that can happen are residents themselves. Even as much as the local leaders like having city folk, they want the people that live in the community that are impacted by items. I know on our website we do have links to contact information for our local, rep and senator, but I'll sit down with Michelle and think about how we can do that better. But that's the most important thing, is individuals reaching out to Senator Osmek and Representative Hertas, and I know from experience they do get back to you quickly. They do listen, so it's very important.
Are you suggesting the city draft letter templates that citizens can use on the issues? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I was suggesting. Yeah, or talking points or bullet points, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd probably be more supportive of a bullet point thing of our initiatives or a letter, but draft letters people kind of, when you get 200 emails and you can read they're all a draft letter, they kind of go on deaf ears at some point. So
yeah,
we can certainly post this out there and put it on Facebook and encourage people to, here's the city's adopted priorities. Here's how do you reach out to those individuals. I think that'd be worthwhile.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. All right. Well, then, if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to approve the 2021 legislative priorities.
So moved.
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. 10E, COVID-19 leave extension. Brad.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. And I think I might have had a slide or two on this, but essentially in March of last year, the City Council approved a COVID-19 pay program that really was in line with federal requirement. We had to do this program. And it provided 80 hours of COVID pay to full-time employees for necessary either quarantine or care of family members or distance learning or so and so. And that expired as December 31st without any extension from the federal government. And honestly, we probably all thought the pandemic was going to be over by December 31st back in March. However, right now the pandemic is still taking place and there's no changes in need for our staff to potentially quarantine. And the request is to extend this program through June 30th of this year, not add anything to it for those employees. And just, 2 employees took advantage of this. There's been, zero abuse whatsoever. Employees typically have just been working from home and keep the work going. So but we do request approving this extension through June 30th, 2021, just to allow people who need to use this to be able to use it. People still have to use their PTO. You can only carry over so much. So if you use this and didn't get the chance to use your PTO, you lose your PTO. So there's really not a significant cost to the city. There's indirect costs, obviously, but looking for an extension if you're okay with that.
Yeah, I think it's huge that it clearly hasn't been abused here. Because I've heard horror stories in other cities where it may have been a little bit more, but to me, I think this is a no-brainer. Hopefully this gets us through to the end of this whole mess and don't have to deal with it going forward after June 30th, but unless you guys feel differently.
No, I think it provides some level of comfort for employees to know that they don't have to show up to work when they're not feeling well.
Absolutely.
That's one of the big spreaders right there. So I think it's good. Just keep it rolling, and I wouldn't be surprised if we extend it again.
All right. Then I will entertain a motion to extend the COVID-19 pay program through June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
Motion carries. 10F is to schedule a work session for the Northeast Water Supply Planning.
Mayor and Council, just a quick one here. There are no slides. Just as part of more education and decision making, we'd like to discuss the potential big investment in water planning. So asking the mayor to simply call a work session for 5:30 p.m. on February 11th to discuss this. There is no motion or vote required. He can call it if the council members are okay with that.
Does that time and date work for you guys?
Yeah, I think that's worked well in the past.
Perfect. Then let's do that. I guess it's a little tough with only 3 of us here today, but I'm assuming it'll work out for the other 2.
It's been on the tentative calendar as well.
Yeah.
So I'll confirm.
Okay. Sounds good. Then we'll go forward with the work session on February 11th at 5:30 p.m. Then let's see here. Staff reports, pandemic response update.
Mayor and Council, Matt's not here. I don't have much for you actually. So have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll keep going.
All right. That works. Sounds good. All right. Closed session. City Council is going into a closed session to consider an offer of real estate under the authority of Minnesota Statute 13D.053C3. The city is permitted to close a meeting to consider offers and counteroffers for the purchase or sale of real estate or personal property. The City Council is going into a closed session to consider an offer for real estate. The following properties are the subject of the closed meeting: 6640 County Road 116 and 6410 County Road 116. We'll be back here after the closed session.
Sounds good. So with this, either for sure mute this one or close the browser, and then we can go to the GoToMeeting link and then come back to this Zoom recording afterwards.
Recording again.
All right, I'll repeat that for the recording. In the closed session, the City Council discussed an offer for real estate and staff was provided direction. All righty, the last thing we have is the 2021 City Council schedule. Brad?
Mayor and Council, just one really specific item I do want is regarding West Side. Obviously, it's busy. There is not entirely a great urgency to have the West Side conversation on February 11th. It could get kicked to March 11th. Sometime it has to get addressed, but obviously need to work with Sean to make sure he's ready and that you're ready to have this discussion as a council too. So looking for a specific direction on West Side, keep it as is and work with Sean, or move it.
I would think we can move it out a little bit, just given what we have coming up and finding the time to meet with Sean and when he's available. But I'm certainly open to what you guys think.
I would agree. I think we won't cost ourselves anything significant by deferring. And that'll allow us more time to focus and get set up for completing the goal setting, having this working session on the water system that are really much more impactful for the long-term health of the city.
I'm fine. I would make a suggestion that you don't move it beyond another month though. I know talking with Sean in the past, he wants to put this behind him. So we need to come to some resolution. So I encourage you, if you're going to have conversations with him, try to get those conversations done so that we can put this behind him. I know it's been weighing on him quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can reach out to Sean. I'll do it right away here and try to find a time that works with him. And because I agree, we don't want to just drag it out forever. I know he doesn't either. So I will touch base with him and get it on the schedule shortly.
Okay.
If that works.
Is his eye okay? I know we were
last I heard. So hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, not heard.
But other than that, we are all set. It was a full meeting today, but good job, everyone. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Gotta get you in there, Tom.
I had one earlier. We'll just do a roll call vote. McKee, aye. Nichols?
Aye.
Schultz?
Aye.
All righty. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, all appreciate it.